the creation of an RV park or campground in the registered historic district. Questions, comments?
The only comment I got is those folks, they have a business, and I understand your point, I really do. But I think if we did that, we would just, I guess what we're trying to do there is just cut their legs right out from under, because they still have intentions of developing, maybe developing a park. So, and then the other thing is if we do that, then you know, because there's trucks that come on the streets, and what else are we going to stop? Any other kind of business we're going to stop? It's a business venture, and that's my only, and not being disrespectful or anything. No, it's just fine. My whole thing is, and with this group, I would have a hard time doing that to those folks. Those folks have been above and beyond with everybody on what they're doing. I was there last night. They were getting grilled, and they were polite. They were just respectful to everybody. Several times they talked to the neighbors and were sympathetic and were just, and to do something like that, because that's Target Pacific, and me personally, I have a hard time doing that to any business owner. That's my take on it. Whatever the board decides, that's what.
And again, I mean, these are great people, and we all love them. But you have hundreds of people who live in that district who don't want this in their historic downtown. You have a levy that was created because of our historic downtown. You have a national parks destination moving here because of this historic downtown. And again, I think we all agree that a park would be great to have, but not in our historic downtown.
I disagree. I think there are locations in this blue area that it might be just fine. I think that, we just passed something unanimously 3 weeks ago, and that's the understanding that these applicants and possibly other applicants have had, that that's the new definition. Here's the zoning. This is what we all agreed on. It was unanimous. Mm-hmm. The whole purpose of a special use permit is so it's required for this, for just this very reason. We hear from enough people. If there are enough questions, we deny the permit. I don't think completely taking an entire area of town and saying this is not permitted is fair to anybody. I don't think it's reasonable. I think that's why we have a special use permit, and a special use permit can be revoked at any time. So if they were not abiding by the conditions of the permit, it would be revoked. And I think that is plenty of burden for anybody who wants to open up that kind of a business. I don't think we need to put any more. I think if you think that there should be additional regulations for an RV park, then that's more of I'm assuming that would be a zoning issue if it was.
It'd be the same, it'd be a zoning amendment.
Right.
Yeah.
Then if you don't feel that what we did 3 weeks ago passing is specific enough, but that would be for the entire town, not just one area, I think those maybe could be reworked. But we just passed it. I don't think there's any point in going back.
You may need to revisit that then.
I don't think so, no. But if you look at something else, something was handed to me last night that's extremely specific, but no, I don't. I think that the report that David did, all of that information would have been fine. But I don't think that, had they come to us tonight with the information that we received a couple days ago, that would not be enough for me to make a yes decision.
Joe, you have the floor.
Along with what Alderwoman
Susie.
I would say, it's Susie. It's okay, you need to be formal. It's fine. You can't see most of my face,
your
so you
last
don't know
name
my
for
name.
a second.
Yeah.
I was wanting to say Caldwell, but that's not right.
That's my sister.
Anyway, I agree with her on this, and mainly because we already have an RV park in the blue area down at the Moses Austin.
It's not officially an RV park.
Well, it is and isn't.
It was, and that's a whole. And John, he's right, but who controls that is the Jordan Fett
and nobody knows who to contact to.
Jamie Inman said that she's not going to go forward in making an RV park down there, and she's the head of that committee, and they don't want to deal with it. So,
but if they ever have another head, they could.
That's right.
They
have
they already have infrastructure down there.
All they got down there is they've got They've got some electric down there. There's no water going to anything, and there's, where the old house is, there's a sewer, so, which could be a dump station, it could be water. But I had a comment by, is it Jim Baker that lives up there? He told me, well, why would you want to put an RV park in front of the Green Tree Tavern? So, and then I said, well, let's go up St. Mary's Road. Well, no, I don't. Nobody wants an RV park anywhere. And the problem, and I love the comment there, but you know what? Bottom line is the city can't afford to do it, or can do it, but these are all, and I would like all these people to, you know, it's going to cost money out on Progress Parkway to put an RV park in. I'd like to know who's going to pay for it. So, but that's neither here nor there, but we'll get back to here, right? Joe,
you know, Paul, we talked about this blue area and stuff, and, you know, we've already called that something special. It's a historic district, and we have guidelines in that historic district of what you can and can't do. The problem is we just didn't address earlier an RV or campsite in that area. That's our whole dilemma. You know, that one slipped through the cracks somewhere along the line, but we have strong restrictions in there of what you can do and can't do.
but you know, there is no restriction. Anybody can park an RV down there in that big parking lot.
I agree, and they do at times.
They do it, and they can park them on the streets for a certain amount of time. So, and the RVs, I got news for you, they're coming. The RVs, the people, when this park opens up, the RVs are going to come. They'll probably park, maybe they'll park up on the desert up there, Valley Desert for a time, but they're going to come.
But the argument can also be made that if we're going to keep RVs out, then how can we allow tour buses, which weigh just as much and are just as big?
They are just, and they're here too. I've seen
And
some
they
of
stay
them.
running the whole time. They don't have electric hookup.
And I think the bigger concern is with folks down there is those vehicles come and go. We've got this concept of this RV park that it's going to be.
They're going to stay forever.
They're going to stay forever, and these folks are going to come to town. They're coming to, when you're in an RV like that, they're coming to see the historic district. They're not your everyday campers that go to Sam A. Baker State Park for the weekend. These people are coming to see the district. They're coming to see the historic sites, and they're going to stay here for a day or two because that's probably all it's going to take to see them, and then they're going to leave. And that's the kind of flow you're going to have. You're not going to have. And if you look at their rules, what they were talking about, they've got some good rules, and they also are going to enforce it because they're going to have somebody on the ground. So, but and there is a lot of opposition, and hey, believe I've talked to several people and had a meeting with some people. So yes.
You know, but Paul, how can you not, you know, when you add something new to an area, how can you not respect the people that's already living there and been there first?
I cannot. I'm not denying that.
Right.
I'm not denying that. The folks came here and they've recognized that, so they encouraged us to table it and turn it down and go and look at it again. So if we do this, we just took their legs right out from underneath.
But if we're going to look at it
But
from
that's
that
something
way.
new. That's, you know, if I had to vote tonight, I'd have to vote on one pretense, and that's based on the opinion of the people who are already there. When you add something, you have to take into consideration the people that are already there.
And I can tell you overwhelmingly, the people who live in the historic district, especially those who are moving in and investing a lot of money, do not want an RV park. I can't tell you how many people, you think you guys got phone calls. You don't even know. And I live down there, and I don't want an RV park either.
You're a citizen.
I
you're a
don't, and how
taxpayer.
many of you would like to have an RV park in your backyard?
I mean, that's why I live in a subdivision, though. I didn't choose to live next to a place that would have a parking lot. Like, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful, but I have friends that choose to live in downtown St. Louis area because they love that type of life. There's all kinds of stuff that parks next to them.
I agree with you, Ashley, but people who buy and move to historic districts, the last thing in their mind is going to be an RV park
But
in a historic district.
At the same time, it's a parking lot. We can restrict their outdoor recreation of it. You know, like, we can put those types of rules in there. At the end of the day, it's a parking lot. Nothing stops an RV from parking in there now. The only thing that this special use permit is asked for is to monetize it, regulate it, overnight it, and market it. There's nothing that prevents them from driving into town, parking there, or anything of that sort. So, I don't know, legally, if the zoning was changed, if they got the zoning approval, I don't see anything that's stopping that unless there was somebody brought up the Army Corps of Engineers in other discussions, and that they have an article that says RV parks are not recommended for this district.
I would like to challenge and see that in writing, because
Well,
we don't have it.
Well, my thing is,
I couldn't find
I would like to exhaust that path and determine if it would get us in trouble or not
This
before.
board, yeah, I'm sorry, but we did and I don't know if you all were on the board, but we dealt with this with the Army Corps of Engineers with the finishing of that. There was stipulations on after that for trails, for recreation, and for flood, for people to fix their homes, and nobody's done anything. There's been no progress on the trails, so we cut ties with the Army Corps of Engineers. So legally, now maybe if there is, there's no maybe there's documentation here. There's nothing here at City Hall that says that, and I would think, and I could check with Vern Bowman with the levy district, maybe he has something, but I don't think that that's a legitimate.
Because the other thing to add to that, and it's not to throw my favor in support or opposition or anything. I'm not trying to discuss sides. I'm playing devil's advocate, if you will. The other thing is their option down there is to do nothing, and it remains a parking lot that could use some sprucing up, but there's nothing to twist their arm to do it. This would be sprucing up that parking lot, and they're talking about adding a higher level of landscaping, yeah. So that it would be outside. You drive down there, you see a parking lot. Some of those callers mentioned to me they don't want the parking lot there either. We can't take that away from them. And they would like to see a park there. We can't force them to put a green space park on there. So at the end of the day, it's going to remain a parking lot. It's just whether it's a fixed up parking lot or as is.
Or regulated or unregulated.
And whether they're going to be able to capitalize on their property or not. Because at the end of the day, it's a private property, so they can close it off and say, no more public parking, Audubon's only, and regulate it. Or they can put cones up and say nobody parks here. So I have a lot of hesitation with telling a business how to function. And, it starts getting nitpicky. I wouldn't like the government coming into my job and telling us all this other stuff that our contract is with the government. But I wouldn't like the city level coming in and saying, hey, your building, when we've been doing everything as it exists, it's a parking lot, it's going to remain a parking lot. It's just they want to capitalize monetarily off of it.
And to piggyback off what Bob had mentioned about what was here first, none of us can argue that Herb Fowler has been entrenched in that downtown area long before even Audubon. And, he's been on the Board of Aldermen for many, many years, state rep for many, many years, director of Missouri Tourism for many, many years. So it's not like he doesn't have an appreciation for all the concerns. And when do we give his status in the community as being a part of the community any weight over somebody that just moved in a year ago? If we're going to take your approach to thinking on who's first. He knows, he's been around for a long time. His wants and needs, and to see our comprehensive plan from 1997, which is still not updated, calls for an RV park in close proximity to the downtown area. Like I said earlier, when you go somewhere and you come back and tell your friends about your experience, oh, it was really nice, but we had to park so far away, or there wasn't nothing available to park, and it was just horrible getting into. So, there's arguments both ways on it, and I'm really torn as to, which way to go. But they, number one, kind of withdrew their application, and they or tabled it or whatever, and we denied it as per the attorney. I think we should just sit back and wait and see what they come up with. And we're talking about something that they may even decide not to do it.
Right.
Go ahead.
So I'm not sure why we're still talking about it when it's kind of a dead issue with us denying it.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to
get into a discussion of whether you should do or what you should approve. That's completely up to you. But I think from a legal perspective, you should keep in mind that this is only a special use permit that can be granted in a light industrially zoned area. So right now, there are permitted uses for that property, and the portion of it that is zoned light industrial that include light industrial uses. So that could be a light industrial manufacturing plant right there back behind, the back end of the parking lot. There's a dozen different permitted uses that you cannot deny for that light industrial area. And so try to keep that in mind when you're making zoning decisions or planning decisions. You should keep it out of the specific case and talk about the general plan going forward and what the zoning districts are already permitting in that historic district area. So there are permitted uses for light industrial, which includes a dairy farm. You don't put up a dairy farm down there on the east side of their property.
There's already a barn in the silo down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I don't want to dissuade you from discussing it, but you may be getting a little ahead of yourself because it's not even permitted to have a special use permit on their property as it exists now. So the only way they can have it is if they get a zoning approval change for at least a portion of the property, and that's when you start talking about those specifics, what it is that they're going to do, what kind of, it had to be a double request for a zoning change and a special use permit concurrently, and that's when you have all those conditions. But on the rest of Main Street, that's why I wanted to have Happy show me the map of the zoning area. It's not allowed in that C1 district. It's only allowed in the light industrial district by a special use permit. So to ban it from the entire area when it would be a permitted use in light industrial in another area, especially the discussion happening within a half hour of denying a specific permit, I wouldn't want you to do that because I know it's not, but it would look. There would be an argument, a clever lawyer could make it that it would be retaliatory. And you don't want to do that either. You want to make sure you're making these decisions based upon the policy. And I understand you're advocating for a policy that would apply to the whole historic district. I'm not saying anything bad about that, but I just kind of wanted to lay that. That's the framework. And then you make those decisions based upon the zoning districts and what you want to permit in different districts or not. I don't know if that helps or not, but...
I appreciate your candor and your input. I guess this is a moot point at this point.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, we'll dismiss.
All right.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm glad you stayed. All right, Happy, that's up to you.
Okay, first item after that one. There's some talk with the Tourism Advisory Council. They were looking at trying to steer people to town, but also give them information. So the idea was point them towards I-55 or point them into town as they're coming from Progress Parkway to Highway 32 and getting ready to leave the water park or the sports complex. Maybe there's a ball game, maybe they were enjoying the kids' recreation area, playground, whatever. So you have a piece of property that's outside city limits across the way. It would have to be a billboard type of thing. It's going to take time if they want to get something like that developed. So the idea that I came up with, but I don't want to put something up that would just shock you all, and you can give me an opinion about whether you think it'll work. It's just put up an informational street sign, just like you see going down the highway this way or going down the highway that way. So we point people back towards I-55 so they know. But we also point out our historic/business district. I think I've just got a historic district on here, but if you point them back towards town, you've got them along 61 and 32, so you've got all of those businesses, plus you direct them down to where our historic district is. So once they start getting down the road, they'll see signs to get to that area. So what you're trying to do is capture those people coming out of the park, people coming out of the sports complex. If there's a ball game, there's some baseball games coming up, or softball games, baseball games. Anyway, there's games coming up. You want to try to capture those people. This was an option. We used regular street signs, make one up for the historic business district. If you're good with it, when Gary gets time, we're trying to hustle a number of things. You may not see it till later this year, but we'd have it ready for next year.
Any comments on that?
And I haven't had a chance to talk to Gary about this, but he is the street sign maker. We have the 55 sign already in at the shop. We just have to get the pole and have him make up the other sign.
Well, that's good.
Okay.
So is that going to be on private property or?
No, it would be in a right of way. What it would be is, that's why we want to make it look like a street sign. It's got to be to those specifications, to what they call the MUCTD. We would do that, proper height and all that, but it would be for information purposes. It wouldn't be, you have to turn here, merging traffic, that kind of thing. And I think we have enough room.
It's not going to be on MoDOT's property, it's going to be on our
It
property.
has to be back far enough where people can look at it and go,
Yeah.
I think I want to go that way. I got to give them enough time to think about it and not just get up. And that's the other thing, is if you put it across the street, you got people that are getting up to that island.
Yeah.
They've made a commitment by that point.
Right.
They're going to either turn left or they're going right. So if we can catch them a little bit sooner to maybe, I'm kind of hungry, let's go.
Well, just so it don't block views and stuff like that on there, I think it's a great idea.
Happy, my question for you is, I'm not sure exactly which one off the top of my head, the Tourism Commission deals with signage and marketing and advertising. But is this something that you'd be willing to broach with the tourism board that we have when you design the signs? Give them an opportunity to give input, is that what you're asking for? Not just permission to do one, but you want a good looking one, right?
This would be to our, it's good looking as in, it's going to be to our highway specifications. There's a group that says, here's what the highway signs look like. So all of your merge signs, do not enter signs have a particular shape, particular color. That's what we're going to follow. We're not trying to dress it up.
Okay. So it's something the Tourism Commission needs to be.
We're kind of following on what they wanted. They want something out there. They're also looking at trying to advertise in the park itself or around the park. But that's going to be a billboard or some other signage that's allowed by our code, which is, we're fairly regulated in that respect. But a street sign, this is an informational sign which is allowed because we're giving them proper information to help them in their travels on the street.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I think it's great. What do you need from us?
Just if there were some issues, problems, or somebody said, don't do it. And I'll clarify it with David, make sure we're good with this, but, okay. Okay. Next thing up is cutting grass. We have committed ourselves to cutting so much grass in the city, I'm just floored that we get anything done. One of the areas that I would like to look at reducing is out on Progress Parkway. So we cut all the way back to where the corn rows are. So all the farming area gets cut. So we own a section of the road coming down from the splash park down about halfway. You may not be able to see it on this map too clearly, but there's a big white line and then there's a dark line in between, right next to the 34.08 acres. I mean, it's from that point to the east is all church property. And again, we're cutting back to the top of the hill by the cemetery, all the way back to the corn rows, and that's a lot of area. We have the walkway that's there, so I kind of thought maybe that was the reason we were cutting so much, but I didn't understand why we were cutting so much on the north side. On the south side, yeah, because there's the walkway. But I think we're cutting more than what we need to be cutting, and by code, a property owner is supposed to cut to the middle of the highway. They're supposed to maintain their grass. So what you're trying to do is keep it where if the easement or right-of-way changes, then the property owner still has to cut that grass and maintain it. So what I'm looking at is if we're not going to do anything this year because I don't think that's fair to them, but I would like to look at discussing that with them next year on reducing the amount of grass that we cut out there, whether we need to really be cutting on the north side, or if you still want us to cut a row or two. And if we probably should cut on the south side, because that is the walkway. We want that to look good. We want visitors to see that and go, oh, that's a place we can come out to and do some walking and go to the splash park or the sports complex. We'll still maintain what we do on our part. I mean, that's ours. That we're the property owners in that case, so we have to keep that cut. I don't know if they can bring the corn rows out anymore. I didn't really want to let it start growing up. I don't think that would look good, but I think we can reduce some of what we're doing, because it's almost like having another park.
Right.
That's a lot of hours, yeah.
Yeah.
So, so you're on our property, we're gonna cut all the way to the corn rows on the north side, and on the other, on somebody else's, whoever the farmer is down there that owns that, we're just gonna cut a couple rows on the side and let it grow up.
If that's what you want me to, I'm kind of, trying to figure out where you want me to go.
And I'm all, is there any
That's the
need
side of
for?
the walkway, though.
Yeah,
Well, okay, if you want me to continue on the north side, which does not have a sidewalk, I mean, that's, we
that's,
we
I'm
do-
sorry, yeah, the north
We
side.
do own right-of-way.
I'm
but
talking
again-
about the south side,
Yeah.
where the walkway is.
Yeah, so the trail we would keep cut.
Yeah.
And we would, we trim around all of the,
Right. But do we need to cut, my point is, do we need to cut all the way to the cornfield? Can we cut, how wide's our mowers out there, Gary?
72.
So if we make 2 swipes down there, 2, instead of going all the way out, what's wrong with letting it grow up?
You
2
mean on
swipes
the-
in.
You mean on the north side or the south side?
This, where the
Just the walkway, or is your-
where the walkway is, on the side of the walkway, go 2
Yeah.
cuts in instead of going all the way out. That's a lot of ground. Because that's, what you want to do is you don't want snakes and everything coming onto the trail. And
that's
then it
our-
gives
but
you,
that's our property, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But what about the other side? That's not.
The
our
other
property?
side, it's a roadway and there's no walking, people aren't walking on that. I wouldn't, it's not ours, I don't know why we cut it. If we want to cut one to keep it for repair of our road, make a 1 swipe up there, but I wouldn't cut all that.
But if we on our property, if we only go 2 swipes and it all grows up, aren't we violating our own ordinance?
So let me just say that when we talk about our property and their property, again, it's a right-of-way. So there is more property on both sides that is not paved. That's all through town, mostly. There are some areas where the street is the right-of-way. So what applies on the south side also applies on the north side. Now, the property owner is supposed to be cutting to the middle of the road, the paved road. So they're responsible for that whole thing. Even with the walkway, they're technically responsible for the whole thing. But for our purposes, we want that to be a showcase. So I would think that we'd want to maintain that so that when people are out there walking, we're the ones that they're going to be coming to
Yeah,
and
they're going to be
say,
getting on us.
right, if it's not done right. We would not be then responsible for the other section, but if they didn't cut it, David would have to send them a letter saying you need to maintain your right, you've got to keep it cut to a certain.
How the Nemeth to get a letter?
I know this may sound a little flower power, but in certain areas I've been, in northern Michigan, other cities, they do 2 cuttings a year around areas like walkways and stuff, because what they do is they plant or they seed wildlife, flowers and things of that nature that you can get from the state and the Parks Department. So you would cut in the early spring, because the seeds would then come up and you'd have a whole wildflower path, and you cut in the late fall. So you'd have only 2 cuttings and you'd have heirloom wildflowers all the way along those paths. And it's good for butterflies, birds, everything else. Is that something we should think
The problem
about?
with that is it's close to agriculture, or any kind of spray will kill them.
Yeah.
That's why, they spray out there too.
Would that get on them?
Oh,
If there's any kind of drift,
any kind of drift.
wildflowers are very susceptible to that, and it will kill them.
Joe?
I know St. Louis County Parks, like on Grant's Trail, they do 1 swipe all the way the whole 16 miles on each side of the path. And they don't do the rest, they don't do anything else, they just do
Yeah,
one
that's
pass.
what, I just want to, you don't want, because if you got weeds and they encroach your trail, you don't want to encroach your trail. You want to maintain that, but like Susie's got a good question, and I'm still, it's our property, so we have to cut it all the way to the cornfield?
No.
We don't.
Again, that's what the ordinance says, is that the property owner is responsible to the center of the right-of-way.
So let's talk about our property, the corn, we own the property that the corn's on.
I would
On the-
say, yeah, we'd want to cut it to the corn because we'd want to keep it looking nice, because we're looking at that as a potential
If
sales.
it's our property.
And that's our
Gotta zigzag it back
Now,
and
when you
forth
get down
across
here,
the-
which is church property, correct?
You got your hand up, Gary?
That's That's the issue
From
on the
32
north
to that
side.
second detention basin, that's all our property, right?
Right.
Huh?
Yes.
Yes. So it would only be from the big dip in the road to M Road is where the concern is.
Yes.
Different property owners,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah, so it's right.
Which we cut on
That's all
both sides of that
this.
road.
This is all.
And on the other side of the road, the
This is
Catholic Church
city.
owns a bunch of property up to our property up there by
Both sides
River.
They own,
Yeah.
right, Happy, from that second detention basin over?
They own both sides all the way there. Yep.
I wouldn't be in favor of changing anything around that walking path. I mean, a lot of people use that. Next thing you know, you're gonna have snakes and whatever else coming out the other side of the road.
Joe?
Dave, on our vacant properties, and I know there's not very many left out of Valley Springs, but for years, the owner of those vacant lots, they only mowed a perimeter of the lot. Is that in our code, or is that just something we allow, as long as they
I mean,
can?
it's prior to my arrival, but yeah, I lived out there. Typically, like a 72-inch cut was done around it, and there weren't a whole lot of complaints, but now the lots are completely cut. There's no city stipulation for that cupping,
Okay,
but
that's what I was gonna ask.
it could be.
Okay.
Eric?
Most of that land is leased now to farmers, correct? Would it be possible just to renew that in their lease, that they will be responsible for the maintenance of that
On the city property.
on the city property? They're already,
So they'd be responsible for cutting the grass? Yeah.
Ever plant more corn?
Or come out, I don't know how far they can come out, that may be part
I
of
mean,
the
if we
issue
still
too.
maintain the walkway or whatever, but the land that is being leased by a farmer.
On the north side.
Responsibility on there for their use of the land.
Yeah, we have to look at what the contract is and whether it's coming up soon. I'm not sure when the leases are, how long they are. Yeah, good point.
I got a question for Gary. How many hours are we talking about saving? Because we're gonna have to trailer the mowers out there, and it's just actual mower time.
Just mowing is 4 guys a half a day to mow everything,
How many times a year?
once a week.
Once a week right now.
Yeah, what the world?
So if we
What
restrict
about
how
mowing
much
short?
we're mowing, how much time would we save?
Well,
Kill it?
over half of it, you're gonna be
16 hours a week, 4 guys, since we're
You're
busy.
gonna be
335 worker
mowing no
hours in
matter
a
what,
summer.
right? On the part we own, we still have to take care of that, correct? So that's over half of it that we're gonna, be maintaining anyhow. And then you're talking, 2 swipes along the walking trail, the rest of the way.
Plus the weed trimming.
Yeah, I haven't got to that point yet, and that's usually every other week we weed eat with that there. I keep guessing would be, to give you a total on ours on weed eating, but
I'd just be cautious about the walking trail, because a lot of people use that.
Well, if you cut in too though, Bob, you cut, you'd be 12 foot from your grow up ought to be 12 foot from the walking trail. That's a pretty good space. You know what I mean? So,
And what's the average right now?
Oh, good gosh.
that's big,
Like 30, 40 feet?
30, 40 feet, yeah. So,
Yeah. That's just on the walking trail. On the other side, it's even further.
and that's not even on the other side. That's all Catholic. That's not our property at all on the road. On the other side,
We don't have any walkway up over there.
yeah, we don't need to, I mean,
Right, we still have right of way that would
Yeah.
extend, but we don't have.
that's why over there, if we're gonna do any cutting, just cut along the road, one swipe and be done with it,
I mean, we're cutting that down to what, a normal lawn height?
yeah.
Well, I don't see any problem with us not cutting private property, but I do agree that we should continue to maintain that walking trail.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of exploring, and when we renew the lease, of having the leaseholder maintain, not just to wherever they decide to stop planting, but maintaining the rest up to the right of way.
I agree with that sentiment as well. Exactly. Maintain
Yeah,
the
that's
last
what
one.
I would do.
Yeah.
I just plant right to the road.
Thanks, Chief.
Yeah.
We're up to the
I don't know
trail.
who has it leased now, but
We gotta watch it because it's along the trail, so we can't, the corn's coming out. We don't want the corn right next to the trail.
Well, can we stipulate in the lease, X number of feet, you cannot plant X number of feet from the trail, and then we maintain that?
Right,
Okay.
right. That's us, you know, to figure what the 2 passes would be, we'd
Yeah.
have to maintain that,
Let's
keep that.
work towards that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a great idea.
What you got next, Happy?
All right, budget time. Take one and pass it on. Take one and pass it on. Take one and pass it on. This, what I'm passing out is updated from what I sent you earlier. Oh, so.
I get all of that.
So I've updated our, the spreadsheet, the overall picture of what we're trying to accomplish in our budget.
Look at there.
We've had a number of items that have been added. I'll work my way down to those. They've been highlighted. But just to kind of give an overview, and this is based on the discussion at the last meeting, we're looking at a 2% increase is what we've included with this budget. And that would be for employees' merit raise, depending on the performance review. We've also included the employees' health, or the employees' portion of the health insurance. And that's if they have family, spouse, or dependent. That's their 10%. We've also included some street projects, which we'll have more details on that next week when we go through all of the big ticket items and the streets that we're looking at. I know it's going to be surprising, but there are more streets that need to be paved than there is money. I know you thought it was gold on the streets, yeah. And then I'll get into this. I've also added some other information, some other numbers in here, so that we know better what the numbers are on this sheet. So, moving back to the 2% merit increase, that ends up being about $22,000 for the city to pay. What I would ask this board to maybe consider, because you've talked about trying to raise those that are lower on the pay scale, maybe consider a 50% increase, because that is a higher amount. It's higher than a percentage amount on the lower end of the scale. So you could earn up to 50 cents as part of your performance review. If you want to just go with a straight 2%, that helps people that earn over $20 an hour. That you know as a higher percentage. So I'm trying to pick what you all have talked about, what you looked at. I have not included a starting pay change yet. If you'd rather have me look at incorporating that and just trying to raise those that are lower, we've got about $4,000 to work with at this point based on the health insurance in the Public Works Department. So we could just increase their pay. We can split it by 3, we can split it by 5. We've got 5 people in there, 2 of them make over $15 an hour. You've got 3 that make under $13 an hour. They will get an increase here soon when they get their CDL passed. They'll bump up to $12 an hour. But we can divide that up between them if you want to try to get those numbers up. I've also got one person in the water department, or a water clerk. She's making less than $15 an hour. So, you know, that she can be included in a separate section of that if you wanted to look at trying to increase that. So those are some things to think about. As we move down the sheet, we have, based on all of the changes that we've made in the revenue less ops in the red box, we have reduced that by about $30,000. And that's including moving $325,000 from general fund into capital improvement. So this is the amount from PIVA. I don't think we can move the whole thing. I think we would then be below what we've now approved as what we want for our general fund balance. You want at least 50% for operating in case of some sort of disaster. And I've reworked those numbers a little bit based on conversations I've had with a finance director I had at a different city. Just trying to make sure that I'm looking at it correctly and not cheating ourselves. She made some recommendations, and that's what I've included here. So at this point, we're about 53%, still moving some of that money over. So in that case, we've also included in here $150,000 in the street department under their capital items. So you'll see that in yellow under streets. There's $150,000 for streets. That can be higher. We'll go through all the streets next week. You can tell me what you want to include or not include, but you're going to be getting into reserves. I'm already tapping into what's the balance that's in that fund, depending upon what you want to do. But also, I haven't got numbers yet. So this is the balancing act. There will be money from our water improvements that we're doing here in the next 3 months. There will be money available from those projects for patching. We're going to just save them so that we can redo the streets. So that'll be included in those streets that had water lines put in. We'll then use that money to help pay for repaving those areas. So we also have money from the Special Roads District. They have committed, they have not given it to us, but they have committed that after the first of the year, they're willing to donate $25,000. That's now been included as a revenue item in Special Roads and as an expense item. So in total, it's $175,000. That has to be for 4th Street. They're going to start from the water tower north repaving. They're willing to contribute because if we do 4th Street up to Riverview, then they'll take it from there. All right, and then for water, I've included $350,000 for water main improvements. This will be part of that master plan that Cochran's coming up with. Under sewer, I've got $120,000 in improvements. For the rural fire, the chief brought in that he's looking at a grant for all new hoses. So all of the trucks will be refitted, re-outfitted with new hoses. It's an $80,000 grant, $75,000 is the grant money, $5,000 is our match. I've included the $75,000 as part of the income revenue, and then I've also put in for an expense. So it looks kind of like there's a lot of money there, but if we don't get the grant, we don't get the hoses. So it's it either comes in and we spend it or we don't. If we don't get it, then we don't spend it. We don't know about getting it until, I think, end of September. So we want to include it just to make sure.
And you said that's only a $5,000 match?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And then capital improvement, let me make a clarification. Capital improvement is an open fund. I checked with Sue on that. That can be spent on anything. I thought it was dedicated to capital improvements. But it is actually an open fund that you can spend on any item that you want. I think I missed something. Hang on. All right.
Remodel.
Yeah, so back up to item 31, the debt service. Debt service is also there's a half-cent sales tax that goes into that fund. That's for capital improvements. So that is a dedicated amount for capital improvements. That's specific. So I have put in there $261,000 for the remodel of the police department. And that's the quote I got from Steve day before yesterday. And we've kind of gone back and forth on it a couple of times. That's the number. That's the most expensive part of this project. It's going to be the police department. It is high, but you may be able to do then this room for $50,000, that room for $50,000. But based on all of the requirements and then the mobilization, that's what's going to cost us money. So it's about what, $125,000. That's the difference from what was bid before for the whole thing. And at this point, we have to leave so much in there for debt service. There has to be a reserve so we can make payments on that. So that's about the amount that's left in there. But we feel that is where the money should come out of for the police department. And then you see for the capital improvement line 33, we're showing $325,000 plus interest is what that number is. That's the revenue that's going into that account, specifically from general fund for whatever, but that's the PIVA money. I think we can balance that by doing a payment this year and then a payment next year. If we pull another $350,000 out of the general fund, it will put us below the 50% minimum. Question?
So you're still talking about pulling out the full 600,000?
Yes. It'd be, I think it was 650,000, so that was the total we're looking at.
Should have been 6, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was 600,000, but have we not closed on the other properties?
No, we haven't got the closing documents yet. Still waiting on those.
But we closed on the 2 acres.
The 2 acres.
Right next to the water park.
Yeah, that was,
Yeah.
yeah, that's done.
Right.
Yeah,
So that may be the 650,000.
maybe that's it, because what we showed was an income line of 650, and that's
Right,
what we
that has
said
to
we
be
had.
the other
Okay,
difference.
so I'm pulling out at least, that part as well. And no, we have not closed yet on the piece with Heisel yet. Still waiting on the documents.
So I guess I want to get this clear and stuff. Whenever you're talking about holding part of that money back, basically to secure our general fund balance,
Yeah.
not to balance our budget.
Well, it's balancing the budget, yes, because we asked for a 50% fund balance. So yeah, it's not balancing it so as I've got revenue meeting expenses. If you want me to do that, then I have to pull out capital items, or we're going to have to make cuts elsewhere. Yeah, if you want a reduction, we can do reductions in the department's operationals or the salaries. I mean, that's we can come down to a 0 on the revenue less the operations. But at this point, if we want to keep things as they are, we want to keep providing the services that we do, this would be my recommendation.
So basically, in other words, just split it between 2 years.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes it sound a lot better.
Sorry I didn't say it that way.
And if we don't have an issue that requires us to tap into the other 50% that we're trying to save on, we can always, that's more money for next year, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we're estimating what our unaudited balance is. It may be higher. We'll find that out whenever we get the audit back in February. Is it that way? January? And then we may be able to make an adjustment, but yeah, we think we have to dip into reserves to make this budget work. And then maybe we can winnow away some of this stuff to balance it a little bit better. But we're getting the money out that's been requested. We're still looking at giving folks a raise. We are charging for health insurance as requested. But I think we can then put that back into helping some of the employees. So the question, I'll come down back to my original question, gave everybody a little chance to see what the whole thing looks like. Do you want to do a 2% merit? Do you want to do a 50% merit raise? So 50 cents for an employee, because it's based on 2,080 hours. And for the police department, it'd be $1,040. That's what it is, and that comes out to be what anywhere from it's 50 cents an hour. What am I trying to do? Yeah, sorry. So for the police officers, it's a little different because they work more hours based on the schedule, but we would still just make it whatever that amount is based on the 1,040. Because that's what all the other employees are getting is this out, 1,040. Or if you want to do it on percentage, then that can range anywhere from 35 cents to 70 cents.
I like the 50 cent better than the 2%. I think if we're going to really try and get our folks that are at the lower end up, that's one way we can do it. As much as I value our more highly paid employees, I think that on a year like this, that's the smart thing to do. And then I also think about if we can take some of that savings that we had on the health insurance by asking them to start contributing, that's another place maybe we can start looking into getting some of our streets folks a bump. Because like Jeff said last time, minimum wage is going up, we're going to have to do it. I'd rather do it in steps.
You might as well start now,
Yeah.
instead of it, the week before, here we go.
Here we go.
So on our lower end pay scale and stuff, I mean, are they gonna keep up with, will that increase keep up with what we're gonna ask them to pay on their health insurance? Because if we don't, we're,
I don't know if it balances out. I haven't done that calculation. I mean, I can look at that, but, I mean, you're asking for them to pay in and,
yeah, I wouldn't be willing to give them less than we're asking for them to pay in.
okay, we'll look at it that way.
Have to balance somewhere.
Okay. And that's on, are we looking at the bottom 3, 4 folks? Under $15 an hour?
Something like that.
Okay. See what we can come up with.
Would it not be proper, Happy, for us to see what increases were passed out maybe in the last year or so as a comparison, or?
Well, I think you went 3% every year.
Up to 3%.
Yeah, it was up to 3%, but it was not a constant, and that's why, I don't know if that's information we should be privy to or not.
I'm not sure how it would relate to, I mean, you're looking at a different set of numbers this year, trying to figure out what we can balance as in, what our revenues, what our expenditures are. So previously, if they've gone up 3%, again, they had performance reviews, but whether there was a difference in what they were getting, depending on their performance review, everybody may have gotten 3%. I mean, they're making that, and I think that's what they deserved, if that's what their department head approved or supervisor approved. So what we're trying to do here is just figure out how to, the thought was, how do we increase that amount, because we are in a competitive society for those types of positions. How do we bring them to a level that we feel can be competitive with other agencies without breaking the bank? Does that make sense?
Any more questions?
So next week is, we'll go over, on the 20th, we'll start at 6. Go over the capital amounts. Every department that has something in there can ask, and this gives you a chance to ask questions about why are we spending this, what are we getting out of it, and approve it, not approve it, change it. And we can work through that, figure on at probably a couple hours, and we should be through it. We don't have a lot of departments to do.
Just a quick question about, I saw the down to $5,000 for the parks, and I understand that. You and I have talked before about the rent money, and we've got 4 months of rent this year that we're not spending in the parks to hopefully carry over to next year. Have we moved that second installment of $3,500 that was paid in February or March? It was before you came here, you and I talked about it, and Martin told me that we have to do a budget amendment thing, and then he left, and then it got waysided, but the first installment was to pay for landscaping and stuff like that, and then I was told they paid a second installment around, it was February, I think, and there was no restriction on that, but it's for the cell phone tower, so it should go to the parks if it hadn't needed to be spent on legal fees or something like that, in dealing with the cell phone tower, but
I'll check with Sue, but I think we included that with our amount here for you, for what the expenditure is out of the Parks Department.
okay, because I just wanted to make sure that got carried over.
Yeah. I think there was that, and you had a couple of months, you'll have 4 months that you'll be counting this year.
For the rent.
Yeah.
Happy, the third from the last item about the cemetery.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little about that?
So when I was looking at the balance of the cemetery fund line, we've been trying to figure out, because the city used to contract with somebody to do the cemeteries, but whoever took it over just crapped out on it, and then the city just took it over and kept it. It takes, I wanted to find out how long it took to do this. So it takes 5 workers, 2 days, and then you figure 21 cuts a year when it rains normally. So you end up with about $18,000, a little over $18,000 in wages. That's what we're spending to cut the cemeteries. But we only pulled $10,000 out for our employees. So that's how we balance what goes into the street department and for what they get paid. I didn't know if the board wanted to look at trying to contract again on that. It's difficult at best because you have headstones. Memorial Cemetery is up and down and around, and you don't know where all the burial plots are. You don't know where all the headstones are. It's a lot of hand type of work. So it just takes a while. And even crest lawn takes time because, again, you have to do a lot of weed whipping to get it cut. So I wanted you to have an idea what we're spending on that.
Can we utilize more funds from that dedicated fund, the cemetery fund?
We can, yeah. And that would again go into our Public Works Department because that's the group that does that cutting.
Is there a downside to taking more from that fund for the labor?
I don't know what the break-even point on that is, but there would be some break-even at some point. I mean, we're looking at an increase now from 217 to 236,000. So unless you're saving to buy more ground to expand it, Martin didn't say that. He was saying we probably need to look at expanding it at some point because we are working our way towards the end of what we have available. But that money could be used.
Happy on the cemetery thing, and I was just conferring with Buck on this. He was around then when we talked about that, and Joe was too, but we were putting that out for competitive bid. And if I'm right, I mean, the competitive bid was less than these amounts were, but one of the real reasons we changed was for the quality of job they were doing. But
Well, the last company that did it underbid it significantly just to get the job.
right, and I think that was causing a problem in itself that we were doing that. Maybe we could
But the
handle that
previous,
differently somehow if we want to be out mowing that or.
the previous company that I'm aware of that did it for years did a good job though, didn't they?
What was that, Joe?
Not the last professional company we had do the cemeteries, but the one prior to that did a good job. He just got outbid. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think he was even cheaper than what we're spending now. Of course,
yeah, it seemed like
I
that
don't know
amount
if
was
he was mid-
considerably less than this. I mean, but putting it out for competitive bid may not be the,
Not the worst idea.
well, I know, but
Well, they still have,
maybe it's not getting the best job.
they have a performance clause in those, don't they? If they're not doing a good job, we can terminate the contract.
Yeah, we would just specify what it has to look like and how fast or how often it has to be cut and that kind of those kind of requirements.
Got to stay up the cemetery. I've gotten calls from people, well, the grass is getting tall out there at the cemetery.
Right.
So we got to really, and it's got to look nice and be taken care of. That's respectful.
So if you'd like for us to look into bidding it, we can do that. Again, that's like Progress Parkway. It cuts down the amount of time that we're spending on all this grass and can get us to these other projects that Gary's got it. I got a list this long of things that need to be done, but we don't have the spare time to sit down and do it, to plan it.
I'd be all for that as long as the contract stipulates a grass height, not a timeline, and not every 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever it is, but it would need, because I think that was when we got all the complaints was
Pretty
the
sure.
contract.
I'm pretty sure the contract's
Okay.
the height.
That goes to the
Yeah,
quality.
but they weren't in the memorial cemetery, they weren't mowing some of the hills and.
Who picks up that responsibility for like a QAE function on that contract?
Maybe Gary looking at it because he knows, he's going to have to sign, maybe Desiree to watch over him. But she doesn't have to be there the whole time. She can drop in and
Yeah.
make sure it's getting cut.
Spot check and, yeah.
Oh, we'll hear if it's not.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. Kim will get called.
They'll put a wall.
Kim.
All right,
That it, Happy?
that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Being
you.
adjourned.
Took you long enough.
Boy.
I'll let you recycle this.
Yeah, thanks for.